Today on Satansplain, I'll talk about the Church of Satan's suggested film list and offer my own little satanic tribute to the late, great Paul Reubens. Also, we'll get to some listener mail on the topic of finding better Satanism internet forums, and also why adding the word LaVeyan before the word Satanism is not only redundant, but just adds to the confusion.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. At the time of this recording, it is the end of July 2023, and I got word earlier today that actor Paul Reubens had died. Reubens was best known for playing the character of Pee Wee Herman. Those of us who grew up in the 1980s certainly remember Pee Wee Herman, this eccentric comedic character that Reubens played in movies, on a TV show called Pee Wee's Playhouse. And before all of that, he had a live adult comedy stage production called The Pee Wee Herman Show. So why am I mentioning him on Satansplain? Was he a Satanist himself? Not that I know of. I will, however, state with complete sincerity that Pee Wee's Big Adventure is a satanic movie. And if you are a listener at all to Satansplain, you know that I don't push arguments like that out without stating my case. So all will be explained in due time. I do want to preface this all, though, by talking about satanic movies in general. This was a topic that I wanted to eventually dedicate a full episode of Satansplain to. I was going to wait until I timed it with the relaunch of a certain satanic movie website, but screw it, let's talk about satanic movies in this episode, shall we? I'd like to read you a little essay I've had in the works which covers the topics like the Church of Satan suggested film list, a short history of that list, a couple of related websites that came and went over the years, and I'm going to finally end with a movie review of my own before we get to the break of this episode of Satansplain. So here we go. Some Satanists are initially attracted to Satanism for its blasphemy and esoteric rituals. This is perfectly understandable, particularly for people who have had to suffer through being indoctrinated under Christianity or some other similarly self-limiting spiritual institution. It is important to remember, however, that Satanism is much more than that. Satanism is not merely inverted Christianity, but a religion which can stand on its own, whose philosophy is applicable to all aspects of life. So while many who are new to Satanism may indeed find joy and liberation through what Anton LaVey called Phase 1 Satanism, the focus on the religion bashing and the black candles and so on, there is a wealth of additional dark avenues for Satanists to explore. One fun way to see Satanism in a more incidental format is through the Church of Satan suggested film list. This list was compiled by Anton LaVey, and you can find it on churchofsatan.com. Granted, some of these films are of the more explicit satanic variety, like Rosemary's Baby, The Brotherhood of Satan, and in those cases, they may be on the list because Anton LaVey had some kind of connection to them as a film supervisor and supplier of satanic ritual props, but other titles may be on the list for entirely other reasons. Some of these films have charismatic characters exhibiting certain qualities that are very much in line with satanic philosophy. This can be true even if the word Satan or Satanism is never even mentioned in the movie. Some films similarly showcase one or more points of pentagonal revisionism, or lesser magic, or other satanic concepts. Still others may demonstrate human folly and the natural consequences of exhibiting the 9 satanic sins, or breaking the 11 rules of the earth. Or a movie may simply have satanically appreciative aesthetics and surrealism. The list was first published in Magister Barton's Church of Satan book. This was my own introduction to the list after buying the book from a local bookstore sometime in the late 1990s. It would still be a number of years, however, before the list was republished on the official Church of Satan website, churchofsatan.com, and many more years before its inclusion in the 2021 expanded reprint of that book, retitled We Are Satanists. After I got the book, Church of Satan, in the 1990s, however, I went on a bit of a journey to seek out some of these movies in various movie rental stores, or in used music stores that also sold used movies on VHS. And for you younger people, keep in mind that this was all before the days of Netflix, or when your typical home's internet technology could support the streaming of entire films on video. In addition to all of those challenges, the original list was just a list of all the titles sorted alphabetically. No release year, nor much of any other real description supplied. So for more information, I turned to what is still the world's most comprehensive film information resource today, the Internet Movie Database, imdb.com. While I was looking up each of these movies on imdb.com, I started to save the direct website links to each of them. Then I figured that, well, as long as I was doing that, I may as well put these links together in an HTML document for quicker access. Next, I figured, well, as long as I'm doing that, I may as well jot down the year and the genre of each of the movies. So once I had all that, I figured it would be better to group the movies by genre rather than see it as one huge alphabetical list. Well, before I knew it, I was just a step or two away from having a website. So in the year 2000, I went ahead and I made one. I made a website, and it was called Hellywood. I wrote up an FAQ to go along with the movie link list. And on a side note, alas, the FAQ did not prevent at least one idiot from contacting me through the site just to ask, "Hey, how the fuck is The Exorcist not on the list?" And is still the case now. Idiots would rather skip reading, take time to write a question, and then wait for a personal response back, rather than taking a fraction of all that time just to read an FAQ. But I digress. I also took the genre-organized list of titles, and I made a printable wallet-sized PDF. The idea being you could print out this little card and put the little card in your wallet. Next time you were in a video rental store, you could pull it out and find some of the movies to rent. Again, that was the technology at the time, folks. There was another member who helped put together the actual little PDF, the little wallet-sized movie list, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember who it was who helped me do that. In any case, my long-term idea was to eventually expand Hellywood to include reviews of all these movies and maybe even some newer film suggestions. Unfortunately, I never ended up doing this. I never got around to it. Hellywood did, however, end up being one of my first projects as a Church of Satan member, the kind of project that would make other members say, "Oh, you're the guy who did that thing. Oh, cool, I saw that." I even got a chance to plug Hellywood live on the air as a guest on Radio Free Satan's second anniversary party in Chicago in 2002. We were doing a live broadcast, and I was at the party, so I got to speak a little bit about the site. They brought me on air. It would still be another year before I started The Devil's Mischief on Radio Free Satan. That started 2003. There was, however, one website that did succeed in including reviews of various movies from the Church of Satan suggested film list and beyond. And that website was called The Sinister Screen. In the mid-2000s, the Church of Satan decided to experiment with special interest groups, or SIGs, SIG for short. And these SIGs were private online groups made up of Church of Satan members, each with a dedicated topic of exploration. So there was music, there was cooking, cryptography, some other subject. And the idea was for Satanists of mutual interest to get together for in-depth discussion and eventually make something tangible out of it. So one of these groups was all about movies, and it was from that group that Purging Talent Publishing, which is run by Church of Satan Magister Matt G. Paradise, created the Sinister Screen website in 2005. That website, The Sinister Screen, ran for a number of years and included movie reviews written by Church of Satan members on not only some of the movies from the original list, but additional movies as well. and why these movies might appeal to fellow Satanists. The Sinister screen was eventually taken down, but then the website was brought back. Then a couple of years ago, the website was taken down again as Magister Paradise wanted to focus on other projects instead. I personally would like to relaunch the site again someday, and I got his full permission for doing so, but I have to confess I just haven't gotten around to it yet. In recent years, I did, however, try to compile as many trailers as I could find for the films on the Church of Satan recommended film list, and I broke those down into 3 playlists on YouTube, roughly by genre, based on my original genre labels that I made for the Hellywood site. And I'll try to include the links for those trailer playlists in the description of this Satansplain episode. Now, I have heard some Satanists ask, will the Church of Satan be adding any more films to this suggested film list? And to answer that, I will say that was actually considered when Magistra Blanche Barton was working on We Are Satanists, the re-release of the Church of Satan book. She sent out a survey to various Church of Satan members in good standing and asked, among many other questions, if we could name, I think it was up to 5 movies we would like to see added to the Church of Satan suggested film list. It seems, however, that those suggestions did not end up being used. We republished the book with just the original list. I imagine there were several reasons for that. First of all, We Are Satanists, the re-release of the book was already running over 700 pages. And second of all, with Satanists having so many different tastes and so many movies having been made after or even before the original list was put together, who knows how many titles were even mentioned by more than 2 Satanists who responded. It would be crazy, I think, to try to include everything. And third, I think it was felt that since the list was compiled by Anton LaVey himself, there was something to be said about seeing what he listed and not diluting that list with, 80 random horror movies rattled off by 80 different people. I mean, I'm sure there are some great suggestions, and I would like to, hear further suggestions from other Church of Satan members, and we do talk about that from time to time on Church of Satan forums. Hey, there's this movie that, I think would be appealing to other Satanists, and here's why. And, so that's good. But regardless, the list has just remained the same for now. I heard somebody recently say, hey, how come these are all old movies and no new movies? And personally, I don't like much of any new movies. I don't like much of any entertainment from the 21st century, come to think of it. I think a lot of it's crap. Maybe that's just because I'm an older guy, but, just my personal opinion. But I think there's a wealth of things in the past that are just waiting to be rediscovered. You can find not only the original list on churchofsatan.com, but some great little summaries of all the movies, which I think were supplied by Reverend G. Edwin Taylor. But getting back to the Sinister screen, while that website was up, I did contribute a few film reviews. I wrote at least 2 for films in the list, and 1 for a film not on the Church of Satan suggested list. And this brings us back, finally, to Paul Reubens. Back in the 1990s, a good friend of mine in the Church of Satan, Phil Marfuta, who unfortunately passed away some years ago, well, he had once brought up in conversation that he felt the 1985 movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was a satanic movie. And the more I thought about it and heard his arguments, the more I agreed. So fast forward to the mid-2000s, I decided to rewatch the movie, expand on some of those ideas, and I wrote a review. So, as a Satanist for the website, The Sinister Screen, here is my review of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is, to quote the tagline, the story of a rebel and his bike. The rebel is Pee-wee Herman, the famous zany stage character of comedian Paul Reubens. Pee-wee is a true eclectic who lives in his own total environment. His lair not only holds an aquarium bathroom window, fireman pole, giant bathroom appliances, and a pancake-flipping artificial human companion, but safely houses his most prized possession, his bicycle. his bicycle is his mechanical familiar, an inseparable complement of himself. Then one day the bicycle is mysteriously stolen. When his friends can't help and the police are of no use, Pee-wee knows that he must take matters into his own hands. He makes it his vital mission to recover his stolen bicycle. This quest leads him on a wild chase through several parts of the country, and Pee-wee stops at nothing to get his beloved material possession back. Along the way, the hero befriends a ruthless biker gang known as Satan's Helpers, makes cunning use of the latest novelty store prank items, breaks world records for rodeo riding, becomes a movie star, and cleverly uses disguises and the art of deception to pass through a police roadblock, interrogate pretentious rich boy suspects, and whatever else puts him closer to getting his bicycle back. The only time he does not put his interests first is when he risks his own life to run into a burning pet store and rescue countless animals, even the ugly ones. We also see excellent examples of cold reading from Madame Ruby, memorably witty put-downs, plus disturbing nightmares of clowns and claymation, which I've heard many Generation X folks vividly remember being scared by as children. The film was Tim Burton's full-length debut, and, like virtually all of Tim Burton's works, has a soundtrack by Danny Elfman, whose other works I've seen many Satanists, including myself, make use of for the ritual chamber. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is a satanic masterpiece through and through. I encourage Satanists to check out the DVD release to see some great deleted scenes in addition to the main feature. Hail Pee-wee. Let us take a break right here. You are listening to Satansplain.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
In 1966, Anton LaVey created the Church of Satan, marking the beginning of the Age of Fire and Year 1 Anno Satanis. In 1969, he published the Satanic Bible, codifying Satanism as a religion, the first time it's been done in human history.
In the name of Satan, ruler of the earth, king of hell, come forth from the pit, bestow the blessings of hell upon us. For we are your children, and we invoke thee this night.
In 2001, I was appointed High Priest of the Church of Satan. In 2007, I published the Satanic Scriptures, further defining and expanding on Satanic philosophy and greater magic ritual.
Hail, Satan full of might! Hail, Satan full of might! Our allegiance is with thee! Our allegiance is with thee! Cursed are they! Cursed are they! The God adorers! The God adorers! And cursed are the worshippers! And cursed are the worshippers! Of the Nazarene eunuch! Of the Nazarene eunuch!
For the past 50 years, the Church of Satan has stood as the sole organization to define and defend Satanism as a religion. And though pretenders to the infernal throne have come and gone, we have stood the test of time and will into the future. Visit churchofsatan.com for more information and read the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Scriptures. Knowledge is the solution for ignorance. Hail, Satan!
Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. Visit the official website, satansplain.com. You can also listen to full episodes right there on satansplain.com. You can also find Satansplain episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, and other places as well. Please give a like or a follow or a subscribe or whatever the equivalent is on the Satanism channels on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. For all comments and correspondence, you can directly email me. bill@satansplain.com is the email address, because I don't always see social media messenger messages and comments. Best way is email. With that, let's get to some email. I appreciate all of you who have written in and have had the patience for me to respond. I'm not going to lie, I've been really busy the month of July with personal things, getting a new home and a new job established, and all that jazz. So for the rest of the episode, let me read and respond to some emails. Gabe writes, I listen to your podcast both on Spotify and YouTube. However, I usually listen more on YouTube. In my neurotic bubble of a world, Spotify equals music and YouTube equals podcasts. And I know Gabe is not alone in thinking of it that way, compartmentalizing it as one for music and one for podcasts. Anyway, Gabe continues, I recently made the decision to remove myself entirely from the minefield called social media. I have come to realize that it has become an absolutely mind-numbing daily ritual of incessant scrolling and obsessing. Already searching for some form of acceptance and self-gratification that never really materializes. At least for me, anyway. And what a blissful week and a half it has been, let me tell you. Well, congratulations on that, Gabe. I do know plenty of Satanists who never look at social media anymore, or don't have a personal channel on it anywhere if they ever did. Magus Peter H. Gilmore, for that matter, the high priest of the Church of Satan, is not on social media. Actually, I think he had an official Tumblr account, but that's it. So if you see any page or channel on Facebook or Twitter or whatever claiming to be Peter Gilmore, well, it's a fake page, period. Anyway, continuing on with the letter, Gabe says, anyway, you did mention something in your most recent episode that aroused my attention. You mentioned something about Church of Satan discussion forums outside the sphere of social media. Forums dedicated to Church of Satan members only, which is something I happen to be. Is that something you are at liberty or willing to disclose? I would love to stay up to date and current with all things Church of Satan, but I just can't do the social media thing anymore. My sanity and my sense of dignity are far too precious. So I said to Gabe that there have indeed been Satanism internet forums outside of social media. In fact, they've been around well before social media. Satanism message boards, emailing lists, chat rooms, and so on. The problem is not many people, Satanists or otherwise, are using that sort of technology these days. Letters to the Devil, for example, was an amazing message board for many years, but frankly became a ghost town once people were using social media more and more. And I'm guilty of that myself. You know, the appeal of places like MySpace and then later Facebook or Twitter, I think the appeal was, hey, I can not only go to a message board to talk about this thing I like to talk about, but I can get updates on what each and every one of my friends are doing. I can see what my favorite author or my favorite band is up to. And I can do all of this from the same website. Or now that I have a smartphone, I can do it from the same app in my hand. So just by virtue of the fact that when it comes to the internet world, most people these days are on social media, it's kind of inevitable that most Satanists are to be found there too. And generally speaking, when it comes to having some kind of discussion group, the more people, the better in general, because you have more people contributing. I mean, it's not much of a discussion if there are only 5 or 10 people and nobody's really posting anything, which means nobody is replying to anything. So I would argue that in 2023, if you want to go where Satanists are, unfortunately, you have to go to where the people are, and that is more or less on social media. Now, it may not be this way forever. In fact, I've already seen news groups in the 1990s make way for IRC chat rooms, later into the 90s, and people stopped using those and started using web-based message boards, and people left those for MySpace. They left MySpace for Facebook, etc. So who knows? Maybe within a few years, the concept of social media in general will go away, and people will flock to some other form of internet technology. It's just always been the case every once in a while, so we'll see. But yes, there are places on or off of social media where Church of Satan members have set up spaces for discussion for only other Church of Satan members. I don't use all of them myself, but I know there are Satanists who have, members only place discussions on Undercroft or Discord or what have you. I myself am on Facebook a lot. And there are some Facebook groups, as they're called, that Church of Satan members formed and set up for members only. And as you can imagine, the quality of discussion there is amazing compared to your average Satanism forum you find online. Because, you have none of the crazed devil worshippers, the other pseudo-Satanists, the Christian trolls, the Illuminati seekers from Nigeria. They're not there. They're filtered out. Just real Satanists talking Satanism. In fact, the far majority of Church of Satan members I know who are on social media and also choose to participate on Satanism forums at all will only do so on private members-only forums. In fact, not only that, but I know some Satanists who say like that is their only reason, for example, for having a Facebook account, or they have Twitter only to see what the Church of Satan channel is up to, so on. A lot of the members-only forums, though, are set to private or some other kind of similar status where they can't be found on a general search. You have to know somebody who's already in the group, and they have to invite you. And then, of course, your membership has to be verified by whoever is running the group and so on. But if you do have a Facebook account that's not a brand new account, and you give me your information, I can help you get into a Church of Satan members-only forum. And the same goes for a number of other Church of Satan members who heard me in the last episode. I've written back to a bunch of you. I'm trying my best to reply back to all of you and help you out, because I know there are members who, may have just recently joined, or maybe they have been members for a while and they don't realize, oh, wait, there's some private Church of Satan members-only places I can go to. I don't have to go to, this bad Lucifer's Temple of the Porch forum. I don't know, whatever its name, you know what I mean. Anyway, I got emails from other readers who say they use Discord, Telegram, and some other platforms. Unfortunately, I myself don't use those, so I wouldn't be able to help you out there. But I do know there are Church of Satan members who use those. So whatever medium it is you use, I try to seek out Church of Satan members who use those. Take it from there. Speaking of Facebook groups, I have an email here from one of the admins of the Facebook group titled LaVeyan Satanism, which I myself am not in, but to read you this email I got from one of the admins, she writes, quote, "For a couple of years, I have wondered whether we should change the name of the group. I completely understand how it does not need to have LaVeyan in the name, and as you said in the last episode, it doesn't help. The only reason we have left it is because there would most likely be an influx of idiots like devil worshippers, Illuminati wannabes, and Satanic Temple fans trying to join if the LaVeyan part was removed. This would create more hassle for the admin team and possibly lower the quality of our group. The group members seem to agree on the polls I have done, but that still doesn't change that it is wrong. Would you vote for it to be changed?" So I wrote back to her and I said, yes, I would still be in favor of changing the name. So just to recap, as I've said here on Satansplain before, the term LaVeyan Satanism is redundant. There is no evidence of an actual structured religion calling itself Satanism before Anton LaVey founded one. And there is no rational reason to consider devil worship or Kevin Solling's political stunt group or some other thing to all be considered different denominations of the same religion, because they don't even have enough in common with us to be considered the same religion. So to use the term LaVeyan Satanism implies that there are other different kinds of Satanism out there, and that these other people can have an equal share of the name, which, again, makes no sense. If you have an established ideology that does this certain thing, which is what the Church of Satan established, to take that same label and apply it to a completely different ideology, that just doesn't make any sense. Now, this admin of this LaVeyan Satanism group says that the concern she and the other admins have is that saying LaVeyan helps filter out a lot of those undesirable types. So I wrote back to her and I said, if it's any consolation, I myself am an admin of a group on Facebook called Church of Satan, It's not a Church of Satan members only group. This particular group I'm an admin in is open to members and non-members alike. But even though the Church of Satan is a very distinct organization with a distinct religion and distinct history, and that is in the name of the group, even on that group, we still get those same sort of people who try to join every week. We get requests from devil worshippers, people from Kevin Solling's political cult, the Illuminati seekers, and so on. So I would argue a Facebook group name only filters so much. I'm convinced that so long as you're broadcasting the name Satanism, there will always be clueless people like that who want in. In fact, this is a phenomenon that goes well beyond Facebook, beyond the internet. In fact, even before the internet, and to this day, the Church of Satan itself has received and continues to receive, the occasional letter from some crazed person who hears voices in his head and thinks, thanks to Christian propaganda, that this must be Satan he's talking to and he must be a Satanist. And, he's just a crazy person. So what I suggested this admin do, if a group doesn't do it already, is use Facebook's feature where people who want to join the group are first asked some questions, and then the admins can read the answers to those questions and decide whether or not to let that person in. We use this feature over in the Church of Satan group, and it works wonders. It's not a completely flawless thing, but most of the invitations we decline are people who simply never even bother to answer the questions. We give them a day to answer, but if there are no answers after that, we decline. Because in that case, they're indistinguishable from some bot account or the sort of people who try joining hundreds and hundreds of different groups, probably because they want to spam something and then leave. Otherwise, when we get a devil worshiper or somebody like that, their answers, typically make it very clear, and we simply decline them, and that's that. So you may want to consider doing something similar for your group. In fact, if you want to steal one question, one of the questions we ask, here's one you can ask. What do you think of the Satanic Bible? The answer to that can tell you a lot. If you get answers like, well, that's not true, Satanism, because I know Satan literally exists and I talk to him every day. Or if you get an answer like, well, I never read it and somebody told me it was racist, but I'm a Satanist because I read this list of 7 things on the internet. Or if you get an answer of, I'm here to be granted riches. Or you get an answer of, my answer is, click on this link of mine to learn about Bitcoin investments. Okay, so in all those cases, you get a good idea that this person trying to get into the group is in the wrong place. Probably wouldn't really contribute anything good to the topic. And at that point, you can hit decline or hit block, and that's it. Move on to the next request. Speaking of moving on, let's move on to the next email. I've got an email here from Boris. Boris says, thank you for mentioning your essay, The Number and the Beast, in one of the episodes. Although the book containing it seems to be out of print, Barnes & Noble still sells it electronically, so I bought it and headed straight to your essay. And that essay compilation book, by the way, is called Satanic Life. I always like to see how other people spoiled by mathematical training discuss the topic, and I share most of your ideas. For me, it was to some extent surprising to learn of your background, because so many public Church of Satan members are musicians and artists, rather than dabbling in the hard sciences. I remember, for example, how delighted I was by Magus Gilmore's writing that, quote, computer programming has such mystic tongues as COBOL, Pascal, and Fortran, in his essay, The Magic of Mastery of the Satanic Scriptures. So yes, your article is a rare gem I'm happy to find. And just to interject a point on what Boris brings up here, I think there are several reasons why it would seem that many public Church of Satan members are musicians and artists rather than, into the hard sciences. Of course, the two categories aren't mutually exclusive. I myself am a musician. I play various instruments. I perform. I give lessons. I love music theory. And I certainly know plenty of Church of Satan members in the science and IT world. A lot of them, though, aren't too public about their affiliations, and I think a lot of that has to do with the nature of the corporate world, which unfortunately a lot of us have to deal with. And so we don't always have the luxury of being out and about, out of the closet, the sigils hanging out, because, as being very public as Satanists without repercussions. So, but I suppose also there is something about Satanism that just makes it esoteric by its nature and adversarial and theatrical and so on. And those sorts of elements may also attract is what attracts the same people to the arts. So even though obviously not all artists are philosophically satanic and not all Satanists are artistic, I can see why there would be an observable overlap, of those two circles. And Boris adds that he's sure that public education of all levels does its best to prevent people from seeing the beauty of mathematics and anything else for that matter, unfortunately. And I would have to agree. I myself did luck out. I lucked out by having a series of math teachers when I was young who had a real passion for the subject. And then I went to a private high school where the math teachers were even more dedicated and more passionate. One observation that I think I mentioned in that essay of mine, The Number of the Beast, is that whenever it comes up that I got my degrees in mathematics, I always get this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, well, I'm terrible at math. Almost in like a bragging kind of way. I have a whole separate rant on why I think that approach is stupid, but to get to the point I want to make, when I probe these people a little more and try to learn why they hate math and why they're so terrible at it, it typically turns out that they had one or more really terrible math teachers when they were a kid. I've had people tell me that their math class consisted of, say, for example, the gym teacher who came in just because he was free that period, and he would write some arithmetic problems on the board, then go back to reading a newspaper while everybody worked away. So, no engagement or anything. Or getting more advanced math meant, adding up 4 columns of numbers instead of 3. Or teachers who were just terrible as teachers and just abusive in general. Or sometimes it wasn't just the teacher. I've had multiple women, for example, say that they were told by an older sister or an older female friend, oh, that's okay if you're bad at math, because math and science are boy subjects. So, when I hear all these stories, I'm not surprised that there are lots of people out there who suck at math and make any number of excuses as to why that's the case. What I find especially hypocritical, though, are the people who post online that they hate math. Oh, algebra is so useless. When is anybody going to need that? And I say, well, gee, in order for you to post that online, you had to open up an app that uses linear algebra to scale the window. Then it used some kind of multi-bit encryption to apply a math formula to your password, or your stored password to verify it's you. Then you needed some kind of mathematical optimization algorithms to connect to the right place on the internet, and there's an algebraic variable in the code that stores the number of likes on your post. And I mean, come on, you should be thanking algebra for all of that. Or thank the engineers. Thank the engineers who did all of that so that you don't have to. You're welcome. Anyway, enough of that rant. Let's end this show on a more lighthearted note. It's only fitting since we started with Pee Wee Herman. And what better way to lighten the mood than with a satanic anecdote? That means it is time for a Satanecdote. Cue the Satanecdote theme song.
Satanic anecdotes. Satanecdotes.
This Satanecdote comes from Isaiah. Isaiah says, first off, I wanted to say I love listening to Satansplain. It's a great podcast. Second off, I wanted to share a satanic anecdote. I was in the store buying ink for my printer, and I was wearing my Sigil of Baphomet amulet. The cashier ringing me up for it commented, hey, that's a sick pendant. I told him what it was, and that I am a member of the Church of Satan. He replies that he is an independent practitioner, and the transaction continues. I tell him that I needed the ink so that I could print off a draft of my fantasy novella that I am revising before sending it to the publisher, and that it is my second project for my friend's setting, having noticed that his apron had a bunch of fantasy-style sword and dagger pins on it. He asks if I have a reward card for the store, saying it might provide some savings. I do. I scan it, Nothing comes up. He then decided to give me $10 off. The interaction ended with me raising my left hand in the horns and saying, "Rock on, hail Satan." So thank you, Isaiah, for that Satanecdote. I guess it's like that American Express tagline, membership has its privileges. Isaiah also adds in another email regarding the previous episode, quote, "I really loved the Satanecdote about D&D and the god Yurgul. He is one of my pet favorites. I run a D&D campaign myself that has been going consistently for 3 years, and I take much the same mindset to it as I do to Satanic Ritual, especially in recognizing that it is an intellectual decompression chamber for my group and I also enjoy the opportunity to make a home-cooked meal for my wife and best friend." So thanks again, Isaiah. Glad you liked it. As I said, I'm not a D&D player myself, but I definitely see the fun in getting together with friends and immersing oneself in this mutual fantasy environment. I remember years ago, I saw a Dungeons & Dragons advertisement in a magazine, and it showed this young guy staring into the glow of a computer screen, one hand under his chin. You know, he looked kind of like bored. And the caption was something like, "As long as you're in your basement pretending to be an elf, why not invite some friends over?" I don't know. I thought that was a clever ad for D&D. It cracked me up. Thank you all for listening. I'll have even more to share on the next episode of Satansplain. Until then, hail Satan. You have been listening to Satansplain. If you have enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and subscribe where available. For more information on the show, visit Satansplain.com. And to learn more about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2022, Magister Bill M.